Welcome back to the good news. All right, Producer Bill, I think that our guest that I'm going to introduce next, Rachel Kodanaz, is quite possibly the most referred guest. Okay, so first of all, our friend Jamie, she's just a great lady who's always out volunteering, and she always says, I got this great guest for you. So she suggests Rachel. Then another friend of mine, Vanessa, suggests Rachel. Then another friend suggests. Finally, I was like, I've got to have this woman on because people keep saying, oh, have you had Rachel on the show? You have to have Rachel on the show. She'd be so inspirational. And that's the beauty of the good news, that right here in our own community, I can grab people and I can do positive news stories. Whereas when I was in the TV news, I really didn't get a choice of stories to cover. And so, Rachel, I'm so glad to have you. And we're going to discuss living with loss one day at a time and just your story and how wonderful you are.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on today. It's great to be here.
Well, were you surprised so many people referred you to me?
Well, the book came out 6 months ago, and we'll have a chance to talk about that. And I think it's gaining such traction that people are trying to market me, and it's just kind of fun. So, yes, I am surprised, but I'm also humbled and honored.
I love it. Okay, so you wrote the book, Living with Loss One Day at a Time. You speak, you are out in the community, you're an encourager, and you encourage those who have suffered a loss or a setback. So I think we need to hear a little about your story before we get into the specifics of your book, Living with Loss.
Sounds great. So by profession, I'm information technology and telecommunications, Fortune 100 companies. That was what I studied in college, and that was my career, and I was going to break that glass ceiling. That is what I was going to do. And then in 1992, my daughter was 2. I was 31. My husband walked out of work, and he just dropped in the parking structure. It was arrhythmia, missed a heartbeat, and that was the end. And as you can imagine, it put me into a different frame of mind.
31 to be a widow with a little 2-year-old.
Right. And we had just moved to Kansas City because I was working for Sprint at the time. And we had just moved there. It was right during the divestiture of AT&T being broken up.
So you're in a new city too?
Yes. 10 months. And so it just changed my world. And for a while, I just tried to figure out where I was and what I was doing, and always looking for the reason and the question of why. Why did this happen to us? Why was this happen to him? Why is this our family? And what I realized is that I'm never going to get the answer. Never. And I have spent, since I've done a little bit of my own recovery, so I would say for the last 18 years, I have shifted my career to helping those that are suffering a loss, any type of loss. I've moved into, anticipatory loss or just any kind of loss.
Like, give me examples for people listening. Any kind of like loss of a job, divorce, loss of a spouse.
Well, I believe the book that I wrote and what I present does cover all kinds of losses, whether it is a physical loss, a financial loss, a divorce, a relocation,
disability, accident,
disability, deployment, any of those. So I feel that you still follow the same pattern. It might be different, but it's still, you're following a pattern. Sometimes like with a death, you know what to do because you have no choice. Nothing's going to change, that you cannot bring them back. In those others that we listed, sometimes there's opportunities to change the outcome. So how you do it and how you behave makes a big difference. But I chose, instead of writing a memoir about me, because I believe everybody has a story to tell.
Do. That's what we do on the show.
Everybody has a story. And my story is not different than your story or the next person's story. It's really what you do with the story.
Right.
Like you coming on air, and everybody does something with a story. But my choice was, instead of doing a memoir to tell my story, was to pay it forward, 1, and 2 was to provide hope in a different format.
Right.
And my format was more of, we have a lot of life to live. We have a lot. And yes, we've had a hardship. And yes, we wish that didn't happen the way it did. But we have a lot of life to live. And how do we live it? And that's my message.
I love that. So talk about that. Talk about the book and living with loss one day at a time, why you chose to write it. There's a daily format in it. Is this going to step us through loss? And like you said, loss of any kind, not just losing a loved one.
It's not a guide of a step through. It definitely is not. I chose to do it one day at a time because that was my motto, and what I needed to learn myself was that you can't build Rome in a day. You really cannot take care of your grief and loss and adjusting your new life in one day. You just can't. So what I wanted to do was do it so that every day was a daily encouragement. And some days are or, why don't you climb on the couch, have a soothing cup of tea, and I talk about why the tea is so soothing, amino acids and blah, blah, blah. And then
I love tea, by the way.
Most
So
people
good.
do. Most people
So
do. It's so
yummy.
funny, even in the summertime.
It's soothing,
and
you're right.
It is soothing. So like on day 14, I say have a soothing cup of tea. But then on another day, I say, okay, it's time to find that family member that you are not arguing with, but you're not comfortable with, and you need to go patch that up. And other days I say no meal should be alone. So that means you need to find somebody to have a meal with. So while they're working through their grief and loss, they don't even realize as they're reading the book that they're working through their grief and loss, because
It's so beautiful. It's like a healing journey.
it is a healing journey. And it's just like when I talk about cleaning out the closets and talk about just every day, like why trinkets are so important, whether it's a teddy bear or whether it's rosary beads or whatever it is that's your choice of a trinket and what it means. So every day is a different lesson or a thought.
I love it, Jill. It reminds me of the Advent calendar. Remember at Christmas when one of your kids opened all the boxes and ate all the chocolate, and the other kids went and they were gone. But how exciting it is to open the box. So every day, in living with loss, you've got like this, something that you can do that's fun and healing. But it kind of, I think, also, Rachel, keeps you moving forward, because it's so easy to just like curl up in a ball and pull the sheets over your head and not meet a friend for lunch and not make amends with a family member, and not get up to make tea.
Correct. And it goes on. Like I said, some days I'm really soft. And the other days I say, okay, it's your loved one's birthday. Let's bake a cake. Let's do this. Let's go to a movie. Let's play hooky. So every day is something different. And there's no beginning. There's no end. It's not January till December. It doesn't matter if you're 3 months out from your loss or 10 years out from your loss. And the feedback that I've been getting, which is why I'm doing more with outside of just death and grief, is it's just people keep telling me it could be used for any type of loss, because it's an uplifting, it's a hands-on, and it's a project every day.
Oh, neat.
That's
like
fine.
What a great blessing that came out of it, that now you can help people in all kinds of different situations. And because of your journey, if you're just joining us, Rachel Kodanaz lost her husband when she was 31. Her daughter was just 2. And her new book, Living with Loss One Day at a Time, is for any kind of loss. Because of your journey, and because you now help others, what kind of message, what do you want them to take away from this book? What are you trying to teach people or help people with specifically? When I'm done with this book, how do you want me to be changed, healed, helped, hoped? Hoped. I like that.
What really, at the end of the day, is to redefine your relationship with this person that you have lost, or the situation that is the hardship that you're on, to redefine what that looks like so you can go forward. So, for example, for me and my husband, I'm remarried, although I hate the word remarried, but I'm remarried, and my deceased husband, Rod, goes with us everywhere. He's in this room with us right now during this interview. He goes everywhere. I have taken him in a different way, and I've brought him the rest of the way in my life. So what I would love for the readers or the listeners, you take the situation and you bring it with you. It's not the end of if I were to take the day I was born and the day that he was died, and I was to make that a chunk of my life, and then decided to start over, what happened to me in my first chunk of my life is what shapes me for the rest. And I think you should take this experience with you the rest of the way where you go.
Now, there's some talk about gifts of grief. And I recently spoke with a woman who wrote a book about praising in the middle of your pain. And she had cancer, and a friend said, well, you need to, praise every morning, and you need to journal and in the midst of your grief. And she was like, what do you mean? I just got cancer. Why would I want to, praise God every morning? That's just crazy. But now she has a book on it, and it really helped her. So are there gifts in the midst of grief? Are there gifts in the middle of a tragedy?
I believe me sitting here right now is a gift. So it's a gift to the listeners. It's a gift to you. It's a gift to anybody. Because I wouldn't have been doing it, because it was the glass ceiling that I wanted to break.
You were doing telecommunications. It's so far from this.
Exactly. And now I want to break the glass ceiling, that it's okay to cry and to be sad when there's grief, when there's grief involved. I believe that my huge gift is, my current husband says to me all the time, they forgot to cut the umbilical cord with you and your daughter, who lives in New York, so it's 1,800 miles away. I think the lessons of what we went through and this loss was a gift to our relationship and a gift to our bonding. I just think there's constant gifts along the way. It's not worth a life, but it's let us learn from our experiences and embrace it in a way that we could go forward with it. Me paying it forward is a gift.
Yeah, it is. Now, what has surprised you the most since publishing Living with Loss One Day at a Time? Have there been some real gems and gifts in this for you as well? Any surprises?
I am so surprised on so many things that had happened. I really thought this would be a book on grief, and as I shared earlier, that stepped out of just death. The other big one that I was very shocked with is how it's become a dinner time or a family communicating tool, because each day is something different. For example, one day when I say play hooky and go to the movies, it creates a dinner time conversation. Well, if Daddy was still here, what movie would we go to? What movie would he want to go to with all these new movies that are out right now? Or Grandpa or whoever. And then for some people, when I throw out the idea of the day, like let's build a memorial today, and what would that memorial look like? Or celebrating an anniversary, or it creates a conversation. So if it's an email, like let's say one of the children are in college and there's a loss, that you could write that email and say, okay, we're going to play hooky today. What movie? What movie would you go to? So it's what is absolutely wonderful for me is that how the book is being used as a tool as a family communicator, because I've been in grief and loss for a long time, and a lot of times what I've seen and heard is that the communication breakdowns, and it stops. So this has been
painful, they think, to talk about
exactly.
it.
So we're not talking about the death, we're talking about the life.
Yeah,
that's just, and then other people are using it as a journal because each page has space to write, and I didn't plan it that way.
Yeah,
but I'm thrilled to hear receive emails, I'm journaling this or I'm doing that. So those are probably the two biggest.
Boy, that must make you feel really good.
It does. And I think also the other one that's just crazy for me, but wonderful, is how far it's gone out there, to the different organizations and the calls that I get and just where it's ended up. And I, sometimes wish you had a insight to see how it gets to where it is. Just like me getting here today, 3 people said you should come.
I just think I remembered another one that did, but I'll ask you about that later. Now, in terms of the response, that obviously has been a real gift for you, and that people dealing with a loss of any kind are using the book to help them heal. Any feedback, letter, note, conversation with anyone that really touched your heart? Because, doing this show for a year and a half, I've had so many wonderful, touching stories, and some I can pull off the top of my head and just say, that one blew me away. Anything that you just went, wow, that's why I wrote this book, because, that story makes it all worthwhile.
I would say that what I was alluding to earlier about the relationships that are being grown between teenage children are the hardest to get to. Teenage and young adults are the hardest, but yet it's the time that we can shape them the most on all aspects of their life. And they're the ones that really close up. They're the ones that will they'll just go try to find their happiness somewhere else, and they won't talk. I am so blown away, especially having a 24-year-old, to know that I am serving a population that it's not that they've been avoided, it's just that we have not been able to penetrate them. And so if I were to say the biggest piece, and maybe that's the mom in me, but that's the piece that I just to see the teenagers and the young adults having this book and telling me about it is probably warms my heart the most.
And your daughter was 2 when your husband passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you kept his memory alive? I have a friend that's 38 that just lost her husband who was 40, and they have children, a toddler, a 5 and 8-year-old. And she said the 5 and 8-year-old, they're just struggling so much, just so grief-stricken. How did you keep, since she was so young, his legacy alive, him alive in her heart?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry for their loss. We'd celebrate the anniversary of his death every single year. He died 5 days after her second birthday, so April is a little bit tough for us, that time period. But we celebrate his anniversary every single year together. And even when she was in college, we came up with something, whether we met because she's running now. So whether we both run, whether that's the event that we do, something. We always do something. His birthday. What's fascinating, though, is that she didn't really verbalize how she felt a lot through her younger years. And then as she became the young adult, it's been very interesting for me, not only the book, but just how much questions she's asking, how many pictures that my in-laws and Rod's siblings are sharing with her. She has a new relationship with him as an adult. It's fascinating. It's wonderful. And as we're all runners in our family, as with my husband, and it was just fascinating. She wants to know his times now. She wants to know everything about him. And she posts. What's interesting for me is she's been posting on the anniversary of his loss on Facebook, which means that she's saying that to all her age group.
Right.
And she
Right.
always comes up with something to say, and it's fascinating.
I'll bet she's really proud of you for writing this and helping other kids, through their grief and their pain, like the pain she had when she was, a kid without her dad. So how has she? What'd she think about this?
She is, well, first of all, I let her write a couple of the days.
Oh,
That
neat.
sounded kind of weird, but she wrote a couple of the days that I just put in there. She tries to she's helping me with my new website and, blogs a little bit with me. But the fascinating piece is the book came out in September, and she helped me do a little New York tour because that's where she lives. And it was wonderful because I spoke at the Upper East Side Barnes & Noble. And while for many authors it's not a big deal, but to go into a Barnes & Noble on the Upper East Side with this type of a topic, kudos to Barnes & Noble for allowing this kind of subject to go in. And she invited so many of her college friends, and they brought their parents. It was wonderful. So she is 100% on board. Having a good time. She wants to work for me, but I told her it would be boring. First of all, there's no money in publishing, but also that I said that, you need to hang out with your age group and not your mom.
I love it. Well, I just have to say, speaking with you and having so many of our mutual friends say that you have to interview Rachel, that you just have a real gift for speaking. You're an excellent speaker.
Thank you.
And I think that it's a beautiful thing that this, horrible, loss of losing a husband when you're 31 and you've got a 2-year-old, that you've turned it into such a beautiful thing to help people heal and, and so they know they're not alone,
Right,
So
right.
thanks for doing that.
Oh, it's fun. And I travel all over speaking. I just came back. I was in Virginia last week. I speak at corporations a lot because I was in Fortune 100 and I was in management, and I know what it's like to go back to work, and your coworkers, managers and supervisors and HR, they don't know what to do with you.
No.
Nor should they, because if they haven't experienced it, why would they have the
Right.
tools to do it? So I'd love to go in there and help them understand just the human dynamics behind it and how the coworkers react. So thank you for that comment, because I do travel quite a bit speaking, and knowing that that's good. It's good.
Well, if people want to reach you to speak, if they want to get your book, Living with Loss One Day at a Time, how do they reach you, Rachel?
So through my website, which is www.rachelkodanaz.com. I'll spell it. It's
Yes.
RACHELKODANAZ.com. You could do it through, that's one way of getting a hold of me, through my publisher, Fulcrum Publishing, which happens to be in Colorado, or my cell number, 303-619-3547, and I would love to meet anybody.
And Kodanaz, again, her last name, Kodanaz. Thank you so much, Rachel. And Producer Bill, I just want to add one thing. I was reading some articles about, how to get through the tough times, like Rachel and I were just discussing. And one of the things was treasure the moments. And I had told my friend that I was talking to Rachel about. They were going up skiing, and she's just lost her husband, and the 3 little kids are grieving. And I said, the skiing reminds her of her husband. Oh. And I said, okay, I really can't offer any words of advice that are going to make you feel better. This is, such a dark time. And I'm not going to try to say I understand. I lost my brother, but losing a spouse, and you've got 3 little kids. I said, but try to take those little teeny moments when your kids are laughing, when they, are enjoying the skiing, when they're giggling or they fall, and try to take just those moments of joy that you can find out of the experience.
Idea. That's nice.
Just treasuring the moments in general. I've been trying to do that more with the kids as well. And this won't sound like a good moment, but then it turns into a good moment. So my son was at Cub Scouts, and he has a friend. They've had a couple of difficulties this year. They're both competitive. They're both very athletic, and they're swimmers. And sometimes Riley would be like, "Oh, my score was this, or my time was this," and we're like, "No, you don't do that." Yeah. And so they're friends again. But apparently last night they're playing tag, and Riley, when he was playing tag, pulled his pants down a little bit, thought it'd be funny.
Oh.
Then Riley said it was an accident, and his friend was livid. His friend said it was not an accident. He got red in the face, was telling his parents, Riley's lying. He's lying. It wasn't an accident. Yeah. So when he came home, I was there, and I said, well, can you talk to me? Because the girls ran in right away. Riley lied.
Oh.
Riley lied. Yeah. And, that's a big thing in our family.
Yeah, it's big in ours.
So I sat down and I said, okay, if you were trying to be funny and you made a mistake, kids make mistakes. I understand that. Yeah. And I know you're embarrassed. He said, well, I don't want them to think I'm a bad kid. I said, what will make them think you're a bad kid is lying. So I need you to tell me the truth. He said, Mom, I'm ashamed. I'm not very proud of myself. I did lie. I did do it. I thought it'd be funny.
Yeah.
And I said, well, we're going to go over to their house. So Mark drove him over. And Mark made him go to the front door by himself.
Oh, my goodness.
And go up to the parents who are his scout leaders and ask for his friend. And in front of the family say, I was trying to be funny. I made a mistake. I didn't want you to be mad at me. So I lied and said that it was an accident, but it wasn't an accident. I lied.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
the parents were so cool. They said it took a lot of courage for you to come up here.
Huh.
So I guess the moment that I'm saying is that moment when he came home and he hugged me and he said, it wasn't as hard as I thought, Mom, to do the right thing. Yeah.
And he's got that good feeling inside of him. So you've really taught him a lot about what happens when you do the right thing, even if you made a mistake.
Yes, and that you get in more trouble if you lie
Oh, yeah.
than you would if you just made a mistake. I'm like, kids make mistakes. You just say, I'm sorry, but don't lie about it.